Reddit, what's the most chaotic good thing you've ever seen? Kid I went high school with was a 2-time state champion wrestler. He was terrifying, built like a brick shithouse by the time he was 14, by the time he was 18 he was a solid wall of muscle. He was also a vicious prick, highly aggressive, and a big-time bully. To other bullies this kid would beat the ever-loving shit out of anyone who ducked with someone that couldn't defend themselves. If he saw a bigger kid fucking with a smaller kid, they were toast. Dude was the fucking Superman of my school. If anyone was giving you shit, you went to him. He'd take care of it after school. Was at a market in Mozambique with a guide. Guide asks stall seller if he has any really fresh pangolin, illegal as hell and endangered. Seller shows him a box with 2 live ones. Guide turns to me and yells run, punches the seller, grabs the box, and books it across the market toward where we had parked. He released the critters later that day. It was an interesting trip. If anybody is curious about what a pangolin is, it's something like a combination between an anteater and an armadillo, and it's trafficked for its meat and scales. It's basically sandslash. Who the duck is eating sandslash? The ones who sell slowpoke tails for $1 million. I knew someone who once played an extended prank on a friend where he filled up his gas tank. When the tank was low he'd steal his keys, sneak out, go to the station, fill it up, bring the car back and put the keys back. Took him months to figure out what was going on. Why can't someone prank me like this? Dude, haha, we paid your rent and bought it, got you groceries. You got pranked so hard. Sucker. Haha, total prank, bro. You should have seen the look on your face. When I was still in my medical training in Westwood, I often saw a middle-aged gentleman putting coins into expired meters. The one time I saw a meter maid try to approach him and he ran off giggling. A few months later I saw him at a stop sign in a Maserati. Basically the definition of chaotic good. Edit, fixed many small grammar issues, thanks grammar-inclined internet strangers. Okay, but the giggling really made this one. It was amazing in person. I worked in a Starbucks as a student. One day, one of our regulars came in crying as she found out her boyfriend had been cheating on her. Our shift supervisor took out a full chocolate cake, dropped it on the counter from a height of about 2 centimeters and said, "Oh no, I dropped it. Can't sell it now." Handed her the cake, a fork and a canister of whipped cream while I made her a free drink. He then proceeded to tell people that we were out of cake for the day. 10 years on, still remember the smile she gave us. Smile update. Never had upvotes and comments like this before. Thanks guys. And yes, I agree, my manager back then rocked. In my country, potholes are notorious for going unchecked. A Facebook group sprung up called Adopt a Pothole, and it started as just posting pics of potholes and tagging the government agency in charge. The government is responsible for damages to cars caused by potholes that they are aware of, so they tag them as proof. But they still weren't getting filled. And that's when it got wild. People started planting palm trees inside the potholes and posting those pictures. I can only assume it was effective. Because I saw a pic of one near my neighborhood, went and saw it to confirm, and within a few days it had been filled. Edit, felt the need to share some of the pics from the Facebook group. God, I love my country and my people. Edit too, yes, those are banana trees. Sorry, in Spanish they are considered classified as a palm tree. When I lived in Colorado, someone spray painted penises on the potholes and they got filled extra quickly. Someone in the UK did that. His name is Wanksy. I'm pretty sure that's who gave the person in Colorado the idea. I watched this methed out dude tweaking hard for a bit in a mall, just like pacing and twitching and muttering. Then this dude bolts out of a store with shoes in his arms, obviously stolen, and the meth head clotheslines him and yells a victory scream before security came in. Sadly he got banned from the mall. Edit, spelling of clothesline. Meth head defends company profits, company bans meth head, lawful evil. My mum. She's a guerrilla gardener. She's in her early 60s and she goes out at night with a gang of her pensioner mates and plants flowers, sows seeds and tidies neglected public land, like roundabouts and grass verges. I'm pretty sure she knows who's been yarn bombing round here too, but she refuses to grass them up. I remember reading a headline in The Onion that I'll try best to paraphrase. Man high on LSD turns himself into police for theft after breaking into his neighbor's house and stealing their dog because he mistakenly imagined the building to be on fire. Edit, a lot of people saying that's not how acid works. This was the reason he gave, which was probably simpler than explaining what was really going on in his head at the time. My drug dealer gun dealer neighbor called the cops on himself while high on meth because he thought the feds were monitoring him. We all hoped he'd get caught and turned in eventually. Didn't think he'd be the one to do it. Edit, I'd like to clarify that this was not my drug gun dealer. He was a drug gun dealer, for other people, who happened to live across the street. I do not have a drug dealer, unless you count my psychiatrist or pharmacist. I don't even take more Tylenol than the box says. Edit again, PSA for my responses, don't take too much Tylenol. It will give you liver failure and you will die painfully. I love that logic. Who should I call when the feds are spying? The ducking police. Not something I saw, but something my brother saw. He was on a bus in London, and this elderly woman got on. There were no free seats, but this was largely because two teenagers were spreading themselves out across 2 seats each. This big, hulking South African guy tells them to move up and make room for her. They swear at him and give all that cocky attitude teenagers are famous for. He gets up, yanks one of them to his feet, shoves him back so that Hess sitting in one seat, and in the thickest Afrikaans accent you could possibly imagine, tells him plainly you must be very careful who you're rude to, hey. They ducking back down after that. I read that in a Skyrim Whiterun guard voice. No lollygaggin'. I was at a party and someone wearing kilt was forcing sunscreen on everyone. He would say hi in the nicest voice and offer you one of his beers, but only if you put sunscreen on. He was the coolest. When you said forcing sunscreen on people, I imagined him jumping out of the bushes and just slathering you in sunscreen. I have done this with some of my friends before, admittedly with spray on sunscreen, for ease of application, and it was hilarious. Edit, lots of people have replied about sunscreen allergies and sensitivities. I know none of my friends suffer from problems with any sunscreens, so I knew it was safe for me to do this. Don't do this unless you know, kids. One of my friends stole a ladder from a garage to help a kid down from a tree and then put it back. Do you visit him in prison? My sister and her husband tried to train their corgi to bark at their cat whenever the cat broke one of the house rules. Unfortunately, the corgi never had a firm grasp on the cat rules, and at this point Hess just making up his own cat rules to try to enforce. Sister just had her first baby a couple weeks ago. Corgi feels like this is an important development and he should have a role. Corgi decides that his role is to protect the baby from the cat, which involves a lot of barking at the cat while the baby is sleeping. Definitely the French secret society Les UX. They built an amazing, fully stocked wooden bar and movie theater in the catacombs that had been in use for some years when it was discovered by Parisian utility workers. Later, a team of UX commandos secretly fixed an iconic broken clock in the Pantheon. From Wikipedia, the UX, for Urban Experiment, is an underground organization that improves hidden corners of Paris. Their works have included restoring the Pantheon clock, building a cinema, complete with bar and restaurant, underneath the Trocadero, restoring medieval crypts, and staging plays and readings in monuments after dark. The group's membership is largely secret. And then the administration stopped the clock from working by removing one of its parts. Yeah, they hired a clockmaker to stop the clock again, and then UX snuck back in and stole the flywheel until a more forward-thinking administration would allow the clock to be working. I didn't see it personally, but I heard the story from this guy's roommate, who did get to witness it. It's freshman year of college. 2 of my neighbors, Colin and George, are rushing the same frat. My roommate had a thing for George, so she invited him and his roommates over for breakfast one morning. We ask about what they're up to, make small talk, all that jazz. Turns out George was just banned from the frat for doing drugs. What did he do, you may ask? He doesn't remember. But according to Colin, they were at a party and George saw someone slip something into a girl's drink. Rather than take a logical approach, tell her not to drink it, take it from her and pour it out, so on and so forth, George ripped it from her hand and chugged it himself. I was a teenager at a hardcore show, and one of the only non-white kids in the building. I'm at the edge of the pit, keeping the line, when suddenly I take a hard fist across the face out of nowhere. Catching a stray hit in the face is pretty normal for this situation, but the reaction of everyone around me lets me know that somebody may have targeted me. Like seconds after this, a tall lanky white kid I've never seen before launches a straight out of the Shaolin Temple flying kick to the face on a guy in the pit who just happens to be wearing a logo associated with local neo-Nazis. Nazi dude gets laid out, And the lanky kid jukes out the Nazis' buddies and flies out the building and into the night. The hardcore scene doesn't duck around with racism.